I realized I hadn't eaten dinner for 3 nights. Because I found the 4th plate cold, untouched, hide behind the cereal boxes in my own pantry. Someone hadn't forgotten to feed me. Someone had made sure I wouldn't notice. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the dried mashed potatoes and hardened meatloaf. Then I heard my daughter laughing in the next room. He forgets if he ate anyway. The room erupted with chuckles. I didn't walk in, I didn't say a word. I quietly closed the pantry door, and, for the first time in my 74 years, I began wondering if the people calling me Dad had already decided I wasn't fully human anymore. My name is Arthur Bennett. I spent 43 years as a train dispatcher. Every signal, every schedule, every life moving across those tracks depended on someone remembering the smallest details. I made it to retirement without a single preventable accident. My memory had always been my greatest strength. But after my wife, Helen, died 2 years ago, everyone around me suddenly started treating every forgotten pair of reading glasses, every misplaced TV remote, like proof my mind was slipping away. It wasn't. I still balanced my own accounts. I still drove. I still read 2 newspapers every morning. But facts didn't matter once people decided you were getting old. When my daughter Emily suggested I move into the apartment she'd built over her garage, I believed it came from love. You shouldn't be alone, Dad. We'll have dinner together every night. The grandkids will love having you close. It sounded wonderful. I sold my little house, put nearly every dollar into a conservative investment account, kept only enough in checking for groceries and personal expenses. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I thought I belonged. The first few months were exactly what she'd promised. Dinner together, Meckel nights, birthday celebrations. Then little things started changing. We already ate. We thought you were sleeping. You said you weren't hungry. The excuses came so naturally, I started questioning my own memory. Had I said that? Had I forgotten? Each time, Emily smiled with practiced patience. Dad, you've been doing this a lot lately. Maybe I had. Grief can make days blur together, so I apologized. Again and again. Then came the 3rd missed dinner. I smelled roast chicken drifting upstairs. I waited, nobody knocked. At 9:30, Emily appeared carrying an empty serving bowl. Oh, were you hungry? I laughed awkwardly. I guess I lost track of time. She kissed my forehead. See, you never remember. I believed her, until the next morning, when I found that untouched dinner hidden in the pantry, not thrown away. Hidden, almost as if someone wanted evidence that I'd been fed, without actually feeding me. That evening, I didn't mention it. Instead, I set my phone on the kitchen counter before going upstairs. Its camera faced the dining room. The recording light was off. No one noticed it. For the first time, I decided to trust something other than my own memory. I decided to trust the truth. And before the week was over, that tiny camera would capture a conversation my daughter never imagined I'd hear. One that would explain why she'd been letting her own father go to bed hungry. I waited until everyone left for school the next morning. Then I watched the recording. I expected to prove one thing, that they'd forgotten dinner. Instead, I learned I had become the evening's entertainment. The video showed Emily setting 4 dinner plates on the table. Her husband, Mark, sat down with the kids. Then my 8-year-old grandson looked toward the stairs. Should I get Grandpa? Emily didn't even look up. No, but what if he's hungry? Mark chuckled. He already forgot. Emily laughed. Dad couldn't tell you what he had for breakfast yesterday, so why waste another plate? She lifted my dinner, walked into the pantry, and slid it behind the cereal boxes, exactly where I'd found it. Then she sat back down. As long as he sees an empty pan later, he'll assume he ate. The children looked confused. The adults laughed. I stopped the video, not because I couldn't bear to watch, because I'd already seen enough. That afternoon, I drove somewhere I hadn't visited in years, the Bennett Foundation. Most people thought it was just another local charity. Very few knew why it carried my last name. 40 years ago, Helen and I started it with $12. Every Christmas we'd quietly help seniors who had no family. No publicity, no interviews, just groceries, medicine, heating bills. As the years passed, friends donated, businesses joined in. Then Helen's brother left the foundation a substantial gift in his will. Today, it helped hundreds of elderly people every year. The only people who knew I chaired the board were the 7 trustees. Not even Emily. She'd never asked where I disappeared every second Tuesday. She assumed I played cards with old men. I let her believe it. When I walked into the office, my longtime friend and attorney, Daniel Morris, looked up. "Arthur, you look tired." I handed him my phone. "Watch this." 20 minutes later, Daniel removed his glasses. "I've handled elder abuse cases for 32 years. I've never seen anything quite like this. They're trying to convince you your own memories can't be trusted." I nodded, so I'd stop questioning them. Daniel leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked through the office window. Across the street, volunteers were loading groceries into delivery vans. Every box carried the Foundation's logo. Helen would have smiled seeing it. Finally, I spoke. "I don't want revenge. I want truth, and I want to find out why." Daniel frowned. "You think there's another reason?" "There has to be. They're not skipping dinners to save money. They're feeding the dog better than they're feeding me. So what's the real purpose?" The answer came 3 days later, completely by accident. Emily thought I had gone for my afternoon walk. Instead, I'd forgotten my hat and came back through the side entrance. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Mark sounded worried. "What if your dad changes his will?" Emily sighed. "He won't. Not if everyone believes he's losing his memory, and once the court agrees, the conservatorship will be easy." My heart stopped. Mark lowered his voice. "The Foundation too?" Emily nodded. "Everything. The apartment, the investments, the Foundation board seat. It all comes through me once people think he can't manage on his own." Silence filled the kitchen. Then Emily said the sentence that explained every empty dinner plate. "We don't need to hurt him. We just need everyone to believe he's already disappearing." I quietly stepped back outside, closed the door without making a sound. For 74 years, I had taught my daughter that honesty was the strongest foundation a family could have. Now, she was building her future on convincing the world her father had already lost his mind. She had no idea. The chairman of the Bennett Foundation had recorded every word, and the next board meeting would be unlike any meeting in the Foundation's history. The Bennett Foundation board met on the first Thursday of every month. For 26 years, I had never missed one. Neither had Daniel. The other 5 trustees arrived carrying folders and coffee, expecting another ordinary meeting. None of them knew why I'd asked for the conference room's projector to be turned on. At exactly 10 o'clock, Emily walked in. She smiled when she saw me. "Dad, I didn't know you wanted me here. I thought this was just one of your volunteer groups." I smiled back. "It is. Please, have a seat." She noticed the long, polished table, the framed photographs lining the walls, the bronze plaque that read, "Minnetentation Board of Trustees." Her smile faded. She looked around the room. "What is this?" Daniel answered. "The organization your father has chaired since 1999. Emily blinked. "You mean Dad owns this?" I gently corrected her. "No, I serve it. There's a difference." The meeting began like every other: financial reports, scholarship updates, food pantry numbers. Then Daniel closed his folder. "Our final agenda item concerns Chairman Arthur Bennett." Emily relaxed. She probably assumed this was where I would announce retirement. Instead, Daniel pressed a button. The television behind me came to life. The first recording appeared. Emily sliding my untouched dinner behind the cereal boxes. My grandson asking, "Should I get Grandpa?" Emily replying, "No, he already forgot." No one in the room spoke. The second recording played. Her voice, calm, confident. "We just need everyone to believe he's already disappearing." Then another. "The conservatorship will be easy." Another. "The Foundation board seat. It all comes through me." The screen went black. Silence cleaved silence. Emily's face drained of color. "Dad, I can explain." I shook my head. "No, you can answer." I looked around the table. To them. Not me, to them. One trustee spoke first. An elderly retired judge named Eleanor. "I've worked with Arthur for 17 years. I've never once questioned his judgment." She turned toward Emily. "Why would you try to convince people otherwise?" Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Finally," she whispered. "It started as a joke." No one believed her. Not even Mark, who had quietly slipped into the room halfway through the meeting. He stared at the floor, ashamed. Daniel slid another folder across the table. Before today's meeting, Arthur signed several documents. Emily looked up quickly. "What documents?" "The first, Removes any future family member from eligibility to serve on this board. Her shoulders stiffened. The second places Arthur's investments into an irrevocable trust administered by an independent fiduciary. Her breathing became uneven. And the third establishes a permanent elder advocacy program. I spoke for the first time in several minutes. It will provide free legal representation for seniors facing neglect, manipulation, or financial abuse. I looked directly at Emily. It'll be named after your mother. The Helen Bennett Dignity Initiative. She loved that word, dignity. I wanted every senior who walked through those doors to leave with theirs intact. Emily finally stood. So that's it? You're cutting me off? I looked at her quietly. No, you cut yourself off. The night you decided convincing the world your father was confused was easier than treating him with respect. She started crying, real tears, but something inside me had changed. Not hardened, clarified. I wasn't watching my little girl anymore. I was watching an adult, living with the consequences of her own choices. As she reached the door, Daniel spoke one last time. Emily. She turned. The recordings have been securely archived. They won't be released publicly, unless they're ever needed to protect your father. She nodded silently, then walked out. The door closed behind her. No shouting, no dramatic speeches. Just the quiet sound of someone realizing they had mistaken kindness for weakness, and they had made that mistake. About the wrong old man. I moved out the following Saturday. Not because anyone asked me to, because I refused to spend another night in a house where I had to wonder whether the next meal waiting for me actually existed. The apartment over the garage was spotless when I left. I folded every blanket, made the bed, washed the coffee mug I'd used that morning. On the kitchen counter, I placed one handwritten note. Thank you for reminding me that growing old doesn't mean giving up my self-respect. No anger, no insults, just the truth. Daniel helped me find a small brick cottage across town. It wasn't large, 2 bedrooms, a front porch, a little vegetable garden Helen would have adored for the first time in months. I stocked my own refrigerator, bread, soup, fresh fruit, milk. Nothing extraordinary, yet the first dinner I cooked there felt like a celebration, not because of the food, because nobody could decide whether I deserved to eat. 3 months later, the Helen Bennett Dignity Initiative officially opened. Word spread faster than any of us expected. Within weeks, families from neighboring counties were calling. Some seniors had been pressured to sign away savings. Others had been isolated from friends. Some had simply been told, "You're too old to remember." Every story sounded different. Every wound sounded familiar. I made it a point to greet every person who walked through our doors, not as victims, as neighbors, as equals, as people whose voices still mattered. One rainy afternoon, a volunteer knocked on my office door. "Arthur, there's someone asking for you." I stepped into the lobby. Emily was sitting alone. She looked thinner, older somehow. She stood as soon as she saw me. "I don't want money. I don't want the foundation. I don't want anything." I waited. "I came because..." She swallowed hard. "I finally understand what I did." She placed a worn notebook on the reception desk. It was mine, my old meal journal. Years ago, Helen had encouraged me to write down what I cooked each day. Emily had found it while cleaning the garage apartment after I moved out. Inside, every dinner was listed: chicken soup, pot roast, grilled salmon. Then suddenly, 3 blank pages. She touched them gently. "I couldn't sleep after I found this. Those blank pages, they're the nights I convinced myself you'd already eaten." Tears rolled down her face. "I kept telling myself it wasn't really hurting you. But seeing those empty pages, I finally realized they weren't empty. They were choices." I closed the notebook. "You can't erase those pages. I know, but maybe I can spend the rest of my life filling someone else's." She handed me an application, volunteer services. She wanted to work in the foundation, not as a director, not on the board, not in management. She had checked the smallest box on the form: kitchen assistant, preparing meals, serving seniors, cleaning tables. No recognition, no title, just work, real work. I looked at Daniel. He looked back at me. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I turned to Emily. "If you volunteer here, you're not my daughter." Her face fell. I continued. "You're one volunteer among many. You'll answer to the kitchen manager. You'll earn trust the same way everyone else does." She nodded. "I understand. And if one person leaves this building hungry, You'll be gone, I understand. Nearly a year has passed since then. Every Wednesday, I still eat lunch at the foundation, not in a private office, in the dining hall at a long table surrounded by people who have lived extraordinary, ordinary lives. Emily usually serves the meals. She never skips a plate, never assumes, never says they probably already ate. Instead, she asks every single person the same question. Would you like seconds? Some smile, some decline, some happily accept. Every answer is respected. Last week, my 10-year-old grandson came to visit. He watched volunteers carrying trays through the dining room. Then he looked at his mother. "Mom, why do you always ask if everyone wants more food?" Emily smiled sadly. "Because nobody should ever have to wonder if they matter enough to be fed." She glanced across the room at me. Our eyes met. No dramatic speeches were needed. Some apologies aren't spoken. They're served one warm dinner at a time.